On the streets of Minneapolis, the culture war fracturing America captured in 3 gunshots.
What did you do?
An ICE agent shoots dead a 37-year-old woman in her car.
Shame!
Renee Nicole Good. In life, much loved, a mother of 3, said to be kind, compassionate, a devout Christian, a poet and writer. But in death, she has become 2 people, an innocent victim to the thousands who poured out onto the streets in snowy Minneapolis and across the US overnight. But to the Trump administration, before the facts had even been established,
it was an act of domestic terrorism.
When it came to passing judgment, reflex kicked in. The president waited just hours to leap to the defense of the ICE officer, posting on Truth Social, "The woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, who then violently, willfully and viciously ran over the ICE officer. It is hard to believe he is alive." Republicans lined up to follow his lead, sharing a video of an angle that they claimed justified this extreme response. For Democrats, who have railed against ICE, the reactions ranged from the defiant,
"We do not need any further help from the federal government," to Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, "You've done enough,"
to abject fury.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
ICE out of New York! ICE out of New York!
Dramatic interventions on a day that cut to the heart of America's political and social divide.
What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle.
So what exactly happened? We've analysed a number of videos of the incident from the scene on Portland Avenue, focusing on these 3, one shot from here, the other across the road from here, and CCTV from here. As the incident starts, Renee lets the car pass as an officer walks around her vehicle, appearing to film on his phone. Her car is pointed across the road with ICE vehicles around her as protesters shout and whistle. As officers approach, she reverses. Her wheels are pointed to the left, reverse lights on. CCTV shows the officer who was filming her walking across the front of her car. The wheels straighten and spin a little as the officer pulls out his gun. In the split second, the car begins to move forward. Trump cites this grainy video as showing that the officer was struck by the moving car, who appears to jolt as if knocked back. But it all happens in moments, and another angle shows when Renee Good's wheels start to turn to the right, in fact steering around the officer just as he shoots. As more details and videos were circulated, anger rose. This one seems to show a physician asking to help to check a pulse, but being refused. This city once reacted viscerally to the killing of George Floyd by a police officer on its streets, with initially violent protests turning into a worldwide anti-racism movement. But it was another perceived injustice by law enforcement officers against ordinary citizens. And so America holds its breath to see how Minneapolis will react this time. Flooding Democratic-run cities with ICE agents has become a centrepiece for Donald Trump. Many would say he wants dystopian-looking images of law enforcement officers squaring up to citizens, snatching immigrants off the streets to define his second presidency. As to the human cost, this time so tragic, whole communities will mourn, but his government plans to carry on. I'm standing just a few metres from where Renee Good was killed. You can see behind me that barricades have been put up, actually in all the roads around here, by anti-ICE protesters. Have also been down to the federal building in town where we saw those clashes earlier. So things are feeling quite tense, but at the moment, the numbers are quite low. We're just a mile from where George Floyd was killed almost 6 years ago. And I think Donald Trump's response to each of these incidents tells us something about how much America has changed and how much more ideological and emboldened he is in this second term. You almost can't believe it now, but after George Floyd was killed, he said that all Americans were sickened and revolted by the brutal death, and he promised Mr. Floyd's family that they would get justice. But the Black Lives Matter movement that came from that, I think, led to a backlash which has fed the Trumpism we see today, the Trumpism in which they blamed immediately, without waiting at all, the woman who was killed rather than anyone else. Now, some say he was tempered by the advisors around him back then, and that has changed. And certainly you heard what Kristi Noem had to say. Have a listen to what J.D. Vance, the Vice President, has just said about all of this.
Nobody wants an American citizen to be killed. This is absolutely a tragedy, but it's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights. What our ICE officers are doing is deporting the millions of criminal aliens that were let in during the Biden administration.
This feels like a culture war that you can see everywhere, on social media, on news networks that are all pushing the narratives that they want to tell. And Minnesota and Minneapolis, this city, feel like they are a lightning rod for this. Donald Trump has been attacking this state, largely over a fraud case in which the perpetrators were largely Somali, dozens of them. But he, in response to that, attacked the tens of thousands of Somali Americans who live in this state. I was here just a few weeks ago listening to the responses to what Donald Trump had said. I stood with a lady, Saida, while I heard death threats come through to her restaurants, people saying that Somali Americans should go home. So this feels like it is a lightning rod right now, but at the moment we are not seeing the same levels of protesters that we did see 6 years ago.
Anushka, thank you very much indeed. Well, Renee Nicole Good was 37 years old, a mother of three who had recently moved to Minneapolis with her partner. Born in Colorado, she was a US citizen with no criminal history beyond a parking ticket. Online, Renee described herself as a poet, a writer, wife, mother, and hobby guitarist. She studied creative writing at Old Dominion University in Virginia and won a poetry prize in 2020. As a young person, she took part in Christian youth mission trips, including to Northern Ireland. It is believed that she had just dropped her youngest child at school before encountering the ICE agents. City officials say that she was acting as a legal observer at the time. Well, joining me now from Minneapolis is Scott Dibble, a Democratic politician who's been a member of the Minnesota Senate since 2003 and represents a district blocks from where Renee Good was killed. It's good to have you on the program, Senator. What really worries me, and I wonder what you think about this, is that America seems to be divided between two rival truths. One side believes that she was a domestic terrorist, and that's the line being peddled by the administration, and the other side believes that she was killed in cold blood.
Well, I think the analysis that is being conducted, we see a fairly detailed analysis by the New York Times, shows that she was killed in cold blood, that she was trying to move out of the area, away from the officer at the point at which he killed her. All we can do is demand a thorough, fair, and truthful investigation and continue to tell the truth. Unfortunately, the FBI has now excluded our local state investigators from that investigation. Clearly, they're on the path to a cover-up, as preordained by Kristi Noem and the president. And that is just a shock to the conscience and a miscarriage of justice. That entire agency and the entire federal bureaucracy, the criminal justice bureaucracy, has been politicized to serve the political goals of an authoritarian. And we're going to demand better here in Minnesota.
Right. I mean, the language used by the mayor of Minneapolis, where he told ICE to get the F out of the city, was also quite inflammatory, I guess. But do you think that the administration is trying to weaponize this tragedy for its own political purposes?
Oh, they're weaponizing this entire operation. The entire operation is political. It's designed to provoke. It's designed to punish. There's a very small, relative to much of the rest of the country, immigrant community in Minnesota. They're deploying 2,000 people who are playing soldier, this paramilitary we call ICE. And it's clearly directed at our governor, because our governor was on the ticket in opposition to him in the presidential race next year. So every single thing that the federal government is doing is not to improve safety or improve lives or make people's lives affordable. It's to serve the power needs and the authoritarian needs and totalitarian needs of Donald.
Anger has flared on the streets of Minneapolis and between states and federal officials after the fatal shooting of a 37-year-old mother of 3 by an ICE immigration agent. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance says the idea that the shooting was not justified is absurd. Trump has given ICE more money and more power during his time as president, fulfilling his campaign promise to create the largest deportation program in American history. But in the wake of the Minneapolis shooting, anger is rising as many citizens and politicians question its actions and tactics. Here's Kieran Woodley.
The shooting of Renee Good appears to be the deadly culmination of months of ICE operations across America. But it's not the first fatality linked to Donald Trump's aggressive immigration policy. Back in September, a Mexican immigrant was pulled over by officers in Chicago and later shot and killed.
Try to run us over. Okay.
Officials claimed the man had hit and dragged an officer with his car and was shot in self-defense. As the administration targets cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Minneapolis, protesters say officers are using heavy-handed tactics. The Trump administration says agents are facing abuse and being prevented from doing their job.
A group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do.
ICE's presence and power has dramatically increased under Donald Trump.
Largest deportation operation in the history of our country.
Elected on a promise of mass deportations, he signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. While ICE's budget has increased steadily over the past few decades, the new legislation saw it jump to about $29 billion. It became the highest funded federal law enforcement agency in US history. If ICE was a military, it would be the 17th richest in the world, worth about the same as Canada's entire armed forces. ICE has been using that money to recruit 10,000 new officers, offering them a $50,000 signing-on bonus. But critics have raised concerns. The department is using posters with a distinctly 1930s and 40s feel to them, calling on Americans to defend your culture. And ICE has waived previous age requirements and cut training times in half.
With any scaling up, corners are cut. And that means that the training isn't as good as it should be, that oversights are not as rigorous as they should be.
Today, the head of Homeland Security said the officer involved in the Minneapolis shooting had a number of years of experience.
We recognize that he acted according to his training, and we have expect that all the policies and procedures of review will be exactly that he acted appropriately.
As agents fan out across American cities, the legality of their actions is also being questioned, from ICE officers hiding their faces to detentions without a warrant. The Department of Homeland Security has even said ICE agents do not have to wear body cameras in certain situations.
I think that we've entered a kind of a terrain where immigration enforcement is sort of the Wild West. They're really trying to push the boundaries of, what they can get away with.
This is a battle between the federal government and democratic cities. Authorities in places like Minnesota put limits on how much they are willing to cooperate with ICE. That leads to immigration officials going into cities and stopping whoever they may suspect.
Tensions are high, that the federal forces feel like they're not welcome, and the communities feel like they're being set upon by the federal government. And you can imagine that in that environment, accidents will happen, decisions won't always be made the right way.
One side says this is a government unconstitutionally out of control. The other says it's acting on a manifesto pledge. It is the ultimate test of what America stands for under Donald Trump.